Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 episode number 131 based on novel. So let's start. Wang Donga didn't utter a word. She naturally understood why Hua Yuhao was so nervous, thus she chose not to inquire about the abilities he'd used earlier. She continued forward as per his instructions. Hua Yuhao closed his eyes and didn't say a word. After exactly 256 steps, Wang Donga took a sudden left, and was closely followed by He Kai-tu and Nana. This was a pitch-black alleyway with no street lamps present. The moment that the four of them were enveloped in the darkness, all traces of them vanished. Chingse Hotel, Underground, VIP Lounge. Teacher, I was wrong. 98 kneeled in front of the third elder with an ashamed look on his face. His expression was filled with regret and pain. Now that he'd lost his ranked carving knife, his soul engineer abilities had decreased by at least 20%. The darkness green dragon had been a priceless treasure. The third elder looked at him calmly and silently. 96 was also quietly kneeling next to him with his head lowered. Besides the three of them, the Duskwater Alliance Master Nangong Wan, the mysterious vice-founder, and a few other middle-aged men were also present in the VIP lounge. Vice-founder, what did you think of that youth? Nangong Wang asked in a low voice. A mysterious glint appeared in the vice-founder's greyish-blue eyes. He's very intriguing. He feels just like what we've been looking for. Nangong Wan was astonished. Are you saying that he could be? The vice-founder nodded his head slightly. Yes, it's that sort of mysterious feeling. You didn't notice it, but earlier, his soul rings suddenly changed. He originally had 5 of them, but they suddenly changed into a single one, a never-before-seen grey soul ring. You have to realize that not even the founder and I can violate the rules of the Doluor continent. We still have to have the same soul rings as other soul masters. And yet, he's let us see something that blatantly goes against these rules, a grey soul ring, and one that's very unique at that. This grey soul ring of his let him use at least 3 different abilities in a row. If every single one of those abilities were soul skills, that grey soul ring is incredibly special. Meaningful. This youth is very meaningful. Nangong Wan said, I've sent people to shadow him. Let's just see where he's heading for now, and who he's related to. Since he's dared to use these abilities in front of us without any misgivings, he definitely has some kind of power backing him. He definitely has another identity. He's just using the more ordinary martial soul of his twin martial souls to hide his evil one. Only, we don't know what his evil martial soul is. The vice-founder said, you did very well today by not inadvertently alerting him. I'll immediately report this to the founder and see what his decision is. Yes. The moment he said this, a black-clothed man quickly entered the room and whispered a few words to Nangong Wan. Trash. Nangong Wan said coldly. The vice-founder's eyes twitched. Nangong Wang said, somewhat embarrassedly, my men lost all traces of him after they took a turn into a rather dim alleyway. Go call Chen and over. Yes. The black-clothed man withdrew, trembling as he did so. After a few moments, Chenan quickly entered into the room and kneeled. I pay my respects to the Alliance Master. The fact that Chenan had been able to become the manager of the Golden Hall naturally meant that Nangong Wan trusted him deeply. The latter furrowed his brows. Tell me everything that you know about 66. Chenan's trust for Hua Yuhao had grown even more after seeing his terrifying power in the tournament earlier. He also knew that the Alliance Master would have a few inquiries after witnessing the earlier scene, thus he'd prepared a few things to say. He hurriedly replied, this 66 and his brother 88 piqued my interest the moment they walked in. He then began to describe to Nangong Wan how Hua Yuhao had killed a person in the Golden Hall, and how he'd been betting alongside his participation in the competition. By telling 90% of the full story and throwing in a few fibs, he was able to deftly hide the deeper relationship between him and Hua Yuhao. Naturally, he wouldn't mention the fact that Hua Yuhao had asked him to help buy a few rare metals. After listening to his explanation, Nangong Wan turned towards the vice-founder with a much better expression on his face. Based on what I've seen, this Tang Wu's main objectives are to make some money and obtain some rare metals. It'll be easier for us to talk to him if we have something that he wants from us. He'll definitely come again for the final competition. At that time, why don't I have a chat with him and bring him in? The vice-founder nodded. I'll observe him in passing on that day. Once I get back, I'll see what the founder thinks of him. Maybe the founder will even come to take a look at him in person. I hope that he's the person we've been looking for all this time. Brilliant Delight Hotel. The door opened noiselessly, and a formless figure quickly entered before quietly shutting the door. Only after the day had closed did 4 figures emerge from within the void. The light surrounding them distorted slightly, after which everything returned to normal. He Kai-tu, Nana, and Wang Donga turned towards Hua Yuhao. Naturally, Hua Yuhao knew that the 3 of them were filled with questions. After pondering for a moment, he said, do the 3 of you trust me? If you do, don't ask. If I wanted to lie to you, I could have just told you that I used imitation to do that, but I didn't. What I can tell you, however, is that I'm not an evil soul master. He Kaitu patted Hua Yuhao on the shoulder and took off his mask, disguise, and coat. I'm tired. I'm going to rest. Junior brother, you should rest too. He used his actions to show his trust in Hua Yuhao. Second brother, this is for you. Hua Yuhao tossed a dark green bundle towards him. He Kaitu's eyes lit up. He didn't decline and grabbed the darkness green dragon. Thanks, junior brother. With that, he left the room with a smile on his face. Nana nodded. Yeah, the sun's gonna rise soon. I'm tired too. Master, you should get a good rest. Then, I'll be going. In reality, Nana knew a few things about Hua Yuhao's earlier actions because he'd previously helped cleanse her father and mother's souls. As such, she knew that he was somewhat capable in the field of souls. They've left. Close the door. Wang Donga helped Hua Yuhao take off his disguise. Yuhao, I don't agree. Her confusing sentence left Hua Yuhao stunned. What don't you agree to? Wang Donga looked deeply into his eyes, and a rare unyielding look appeared in her beautiful eyes. I don't agree to you trying to enter the inner ring of the Holy Ghost Church. I can ignore the origins of that power of yours, but you'd better be clear that I will absolutely not agree to you entering the inner ring of the Holy Ghost Church. Hua Yuhao's entire body shook, and he looked towards Wang Donga with a stunned expression. You, how did you know? Wang Donga pushed his wheelchair over to his bed, then helped him take off his clothes. After that, she helped him onto the bed and laid him down. Afterwards, she took off her coat, buried herself in his blanket, and hugged Hua Yuhao tightly. I didn't realize what you were trying to do at first, but I finally understood after seeing that special ability you used earlier. You weren't just trying to obtain rare metals by participating in this underground tournament, that's just one of your objectives. Your true objective is to utilize the relationship between the Duskwater Alliance and the Holy Ghost Church to sneak in. Am I right? It's because of that ability of yours that's similar to that of an evil soul master that you feel so confident. You knew from early on that the people from the Holy Ghost Church wouldn't do anything to you after they saw your abilities. Hua Yuhao sighed lightly. You're too smart, Donga. Wang Donga hugged him tightly and said in an abnormally stern voice, therefore, I don't agree. Even though you have your imitation, and even though I can help you disguise yourself, don't you know that there are too many people in the Holy Ghost Church who are familiar with you? There's no need to mention anyone else, even teacher Xiao Ya can easily recognize you. Do you really think that you can escape from such a powerful organization once your cover's blown? Hua Yuhao became silent for a moment. Someone has to do it. The most terrifying thing about the Holy Ghost Church isn't their strength, but the secrets they hold. We don't know how the Holy Ghost Church is structured, nor how strong they really are. In a situation like this, we're taking them on blind. The day that the Holy Ghost Church decides to make their appearance, we'll be faced with the threat of destruction. I can practically guarantee you that they only have two targets, the Body Sect and Shrek Academy. The Academy has given us so much, thus I want to do something for the Academy. Don't worry. Once I've obtained a basic understanding of their inner workings, I'll get out. You of all people should know that I do things properly. Hua Yuhao was still trying to console Wang Donga. Wang Donga fiercely got up and pressed down on Hua Yuhao's body, leaving mere inches between her and him as she stared him in the eye. She emphasized each word clearly as she said, since I've said that you can't do it, you can't do it. Your life is mine, it belongs to me, Wang Donga. You can go if you want, but only over my dead body. As Hua Yuhao gazed into the stubborn and unyielding look in her eyes, he felt her warm body press against his. Wang Donga's body was very soft, and it seemed as though the two of them had fused together as she lay on top of him. Hua Yuhao raised his right hand and wrapped it around Wang Donga's slender waist, sighing gently. Donga, who? Without giving him the chance to utter a word, Wang Donga domineeringly kissed his lips, locking the words he wanted to say away. Hua Yuhao's eyes widened after feeling Wang Donga's slightly awkward kiss, but his lips softly melted into hers immediately afterwards. Hua Yuhao shut his eyes and simply held onto her waist. At this moment, the only thing he wanted to do was enjoy her tenderness. Just like this, the two of them continued to tightly hug each other. Their kiss lasted for a long, long time. Promise me, okay? Wang Donga lightly panted as she lay on his chest. Her voice had become soft, but now made him want to act tenderly towards her. Okay, I promise. Hua Yuhao sighed lightly. In the end, he'd conceded to her again. Wang Donga immediately raised her head excitedly. Really? You're not allowed to go back on your word. Hua Yuhao smiled at her. Wang Donga excitedly moved upwards and tightly hugged his neck with a happy expression. After a moment, Hua Yuhao said, Help me up, Donga. I want to cultivate for a while. Wang Donga was momentarily stunned. This was the first time that Hua Yuhao had wanted to cultivate in the midst of them having an intimate moment. You've tired yourself enough for today. You gave Shrek Academy a hand after our own match, and you participated in another soul tool contest afterwards. You should take a break. Hua Yuhao replied, the abilities that I just used were left to me by my teacher. I suddenly feel that another seal has been released in my spiritual sea, and I think that my teacher has left something for me. Otherwise, there was no way I could have defeated a Class 6 soul engineer so easily. I need to see what my teacher's left for me. Oh. Then, don't work yourself too hard. Wang Donga sat up and then helped Hua Yuhao sit up. You aren't angry, are you? Wang Donga blinked owlishly at him. Her long eyelashes were so close to his face that they were subtly brushing it. Hua Yuhao chortled and said, kiss me and I won't be. Wang Donga immediately kissed him on the cheek without hesitation. Her face turned a little red and she said, will that do? I know that my decision will ruin your plans, but you have to understand that I will follow you if something happens to you. I know that you'd risk your own life for me as well. Hua Yuhao patted her head lovingly, as if he were indulging a child. I know that. Wang Donga shifted his numb legs and helped him sit up with his legs crossed. Hua Yuhao closed his eyes and gradually entered meditation. He was quite exhausted, but it was actually easier for him to focus his attention because he was. As such, he quickly entered his meditative state. As Hua Yuhao's consciousness submerged into his spiritual sea, he directly opened the partial memories that had been unsealed. Memories instantly flooded forth, and slowly merged together with his own. A projection appeared in his spiritual sea at the same time. Teacher. Hua Yuhao became excited when he saw the projection. Wasn't this a projection of the Calamity Necromancer Electrolux? Electrolux's white clothes fluttered atop his translucent body, but he wore a faint smile on his face as he looked at Hua Yuhao. He calmly said, I'm very happy that you're able to see this, Yuhao. The fact that you can means that your spiritual power has become strong enough for you to absorb what I have to teach you. Hua Yuhao's excited emotions instantly settled down as if he'd been splashed with cold water. He had no doubt that this was something his teacher had left behind before he'd passed away, and that this was just a projection based on his spiritual imprint, not Electrolux himself. Hua Yuhao forced himself to focus, and listened intently to Electrolux's words. Yuhao, I've hesitated for a long time, and have debated on whether or not I should pass my necromancy to you. After all, necromancy is considered evil to many people due to its relation with death, corpses, and spirits. Many humans will naturally develop a sense of fear towards necromancy. I've thought long and hard about it, and about you as well. In the end, I've decided to teach them to you anyway. Necromancy is only one branch of the magic contained within my world, and it's not a frightening thing at all. Furthermore, it's the type of sorcery that's closest to a human's origin and essence. Everything about necromancy stems from life. In fact, the first breakthroughs in necromancy were made so that humans could prolong their own life so that they could fight against the laws of nature. However, when humans dove deeper into necromancy, some necromancers went down a different path, choosing to slowly deviate from the original path. They relied on necromancy to strengthen themselves, and proceeded to kill other living beings in order to steal their life energy in order to do so. I was once a mighty necromancer. In the beginning, I possessed the element of light, and was adept with all sorts of light-type magic spells. However, I became filled with vengeance and hatred after certain things happened to me, thus I delved into necromancy by relying on my talents and opened up a whole new path for myself, light-based necromancy. I won't tell you the unfortunate events that I've had to go through, but before you can completely receive my teachings on necromancy, you must remember that necromancy is dangerous because of its strength, and because of its forbidden realms. If you descend into the darkness within necromancy, you will be destroyed by it. You can practice necromancy, but your heart must still be shrouded in light. These are the words that I shall imprint into the deepest regions of your soul so that you won't be blinded by revenge nor hatred no matter where you are. I don't hope for necromancy to be spread or glorified by your hands, my only wish is that my lineage will continue. I've studied and perceived your world closely, and realized that your world is different from my own. In my world, the existence of gods is equivalent to your spirit reaching such an extremely high level that it evolves. When that happens, you will drift illusorily through space, as if your body has been transformed into countless elements, and you won't be able to control anything about yourself anymore. However, in your world, there seems to be a special energy that takes you to another realm once you reach that level. This is actually becoming a god, but it's a pity that I won't live to see you reach that level. If that day does occur, please keep my necromancy as part of your abilities. That is my greatest wish. My most profound and sophisticated spells have been integrated into your memory. You'll be able to use them as long as you continue increasing your spiritual power. At first glance, light and necromancy may seem to be at odds with each other, but in truth, all things can be connected together so long as you find something that they have in common, somewhere where both things intersect. And that concept is life for light and necromancy. Only when light shines on the world do we have life. Sunlight and water have been the most important things for life and survival since the oldest days of humanity. On the other hand, necromancy studies the power of death. One is about life, while the other is about death. But the truth is, they're just focused on opposite ends of life. Life and death aren't mutually exclusive, and under certain circumstances, they'll even be attracted to each other, and can be alternated between one another. Hua Yuhao listened quietly to Electrolux's teachings, and slowly perceived all of the complex and sophisticated necromancies kept within his memories. He felt as if he'd entered another world. He'd always wanted to learn more about necromancy from Electrolux. However, Electrolux had only taught him some foundational things before, and even then had barely scratched the surface. It was only at this moment, when the lineage and teachings that Electrolux had left for him were officially unsealed, that he truly understood how unfathomable and mystical necromancy was. Furthermore, Hua Yuhao gradually came to understand what his grey soul ring represented. What Electrolux had left for him wasn't as simple as information and lessons, it also included a necromantic framework that Electrolux had personally created. Hua Yuhao had to use the energy within his own body as the foundation when he used necromancy, followed by his spiritual power to perceive the element of light between heaven and earth. He had to do everything in tandem and in resonance with his life origin to do anything at all. Hua Yuhao could no longer use his other martial souls when using necromancy. His grey soul ring represented the necromancy framework that Electrolux had left behind for him, though it wasn't actually a soul ring. However, from a pragmatic perspective, possessing Electrolux's necromancy teachings was equivalent to having a third martial soul. And yet, it wasn't a martial soul, it was superior to one. This martial soul couldn't be boosted with soul rings, but it would become stronger alongside Hua Yuhao's soul power and spiritual power. According to Electrolux's explanation, a necromancer's life energy and life force were exceptionally important. Life force was presented as soul power in this world. This was because necromancy would cause a negative backlash to the necromancer's own body when practiced. Furthermore, necromancy spells that relied on the power of light required continuous resonance through life. Hua Yuhao possessed life gold, so he didn't lack life energy, which in turn was one of the most important reasons why Electrolux had been willing to pass his necromancy on to him. Electrolux had previously told Hua Yuhao that the reason necromancers were considered evil was mostly because necromancers didn't have enough life energy to continuously practice necromancy, which was why they had to extract life energy from other living beings. This process was cruel and full of bloodshed, thus it was natural that other people would misunderstand. It was midday the following day when Hua Yuhao awoke up from his meditation. He was still a little fatigued despite just waking up. Fortunately, they'd already competed yesterday, so he had an entire day to rest up. Tomorrow was the final round of the round-robin section, and the Tang sect was up against Shrek Academy. "Are you all right, Yuhao?" Wang Donga asked concernedly. She'd just walked out of the bathroom and seen that Hua Yuhao's face was a little pale. Hua Yuhao nodded and said, "I'm all right, I'm just mentally exhausted. I've gained so much. Do you remember when I told you that I had a teacher from another world? The truth is that what you guys saw yesterday and the abilities that I used weren't those of an evil soul master. They came from this teacher of mine, and he calls it necromancy." "Necromancy?" Wang Donga stared at Hua Yuhao in surprise. Hua Yuhao nodded and replied, "Yes, it's called necromancy. Initially, I thought necromancy was no different from an evil soul master's abilities. To be honest, I've always been quite against necromancy, which is why I don't typically use it. However, I understood a lot more now that I've absorbed the memories that my teacher left behind for me. I've understood that necromancy, an evil soul master's abilities, and any force in the world aren't inherently wrong per se. The only difference lies in whether the use is suitable, and is dependent on the user's personality and state of mind. These two things form the crux of the issue." Wang Donga nodded and said, "As long as you remember who you are." Hua Yuhao chuckled and replied, "You're everything that I am. I'm hungry, dear. Let's go grab a bite to eat." Wang Donga pushed Hua Yuhao into the canteen. When they entered the canteen, Hua Yuhao was pleasantly surprised to see a familiar figure. Beibei's face was still a little pale, but he was nonetheless sitting alongside everyone else. Hua Yuhao immediately exclaimed excitedly when he saw him, "Eldest senior brother." Beibei smiled and said, "How are you feeling? You must be quite exhausted from yesterday. From what I hear, you haven't even had breakfast yet." Wang Donga pushed Hua Yuhao next to Beibei and then sat down next to him. Hua Yuhao asked, "How are your wounds, eldest senior brother?" Beibei answered, "Both the aura and darkness energy have finally been completely expelled. I should be all right once I recover some of my vitality." "That's fantastic," Hua Yuhao said animatedly. "I can finally heave a sigh of relief. I'll be a lot more relaxed with you around to lead our company of 8. Beibei smiled faintly and said, "I'm afraid that it'll be quite difficult for you to relax. We'll be facing off against Shrek Academy's team tomorrow. What do you have in mind?" Hua Yuhao pondered momentarily, before saying, "I was just about to discuss this with everyone. We're stronger than they are when it comes to overall fighting strength, but I want to let them come out on top as we enter the next round just in case. If we do that, their opponents in the quarterfinals will be relatively weaker. There would be 4 different matches in the quarterfinals. Even though the matchups in the quarterfinals had yet to be determined. However, all it took to decide them was a simple lottery, and all 4 quarterfinal matches would consist of the number 1 of one group against the number 2 of the second group. This also meant that, if the Tang sect progressed as the second-place team in their group, they'd be matched against a team that had topped the table in their group. Following this reasoning, there was a 1 in 3 chance that the Tang sect would come up against the Holy Ghost sect in the quarterfinals. However, if Shrek Academy topped the table and entered the quarterfinals, they'd be up against a second-place team from another group, which would greatly reduce their burden. Bei turned to his companions and said, "Tell me what you guys think." Jiang Nannan was the first to speak. "I stand by my words. We belong to Shrek, thus we're all part of their team. No matter how far we go this time, we've already gained the glory and honor that we deserve. However, Shrek Academy's team has to reach the finals to keep their glory and honor." I agree with Huo Yuhao's suggestion. She turned around to face Shu Sanxia after her comment. Shu Sanxia felt a little helpless. "Why are you looking at me? Am I not from Shrek Academy as well?" "I agree with you." "Agreed." He Kaitu's answer was a lot simpler. "I agree." Xiao Xiao was a little louder than usual, but she fully displayed her determination. Wang Dong'er nodded and chimed in, "I agree." Bei smiled and said, "All right, it's settled then. We shall take these few days to adjust our conditions, especially you, Yuhao. Even if I take part in the battle, you're still the core of the team, as well as Shrek's 7 monsters mastermind." "All right." Huo Yuhao nodded. "Let's dig in." Bei continued with a smile on his face, as their sumptuous meals were already laid out on the dining table. With Bei finally feeling better, everybody was in a good mood today. This meal was especially enjoyable for everyone. Bei called Huo Yuhao into his room after the meal. "How's it going with the Soul Engineers tournament, Yuhao?" Bei inquired. Huo Yuhao glanced at Wang Dong'er beside him before briefly recounting their participation in the Soul Engineers tournament. Bei listened quietly to his description. He didn't even interrupt when Huo Yuhao mentioned necromancy. "You want to go undercover?" Bei asked doubtfully. Huo Yuhao nodded and answered, "I do. But Dong'er thinks that will be too dangerous, thus she stopped me." Bei said, "That's for the best, because it is too dangerous. I know that you want to find out and investigate what's going on in their inner circle, but the Holy Ghost Church has already displayed strength beyond what we can deal with. They're simply too powerful, we don't stand a chance. Furthermore, mobility is a problem for you, and your wheelchair is too conspicuous. Even if you can put on makeup and change your appearance, it won't be hard for them to connect the dots if you appear too many times. This is especially true now that we're likely to fight the Holy Ghost Sect's team after this. You shouldn't attend the grand finals. Rather, since you've already raised their suspicions, you should just disappear for now." Huo Yuhao frowned slightly and said, "I don't think that's necessary, eldest senior brother. The Duskwater Alliance still needs me to fight for them in the Soul Engineer tournament. Furthermore, they want to rope me into their organization as well, so they won't use force against me unless it's as a last resort. I shouldn't have any problems finishing the last round of the tournament if I respond correctly and adapt to the circumstances. The final prize is a Class 9 Soul Tool. That's not something that can be measured with money." Bei replied solemnly, "You can't place your life on the line for money." Huo Yuhao smiled and shook his head. "I have confidence, eldest senior brother. Second senior brother and Dong'er will come with me when the time comes. Even if I don't consider my life, I still have to take their lives into account, right?" Bei stared at Huo Yuhao with a surprised expression. "Where is this confidence of yours coming from, little junior brother?" Huo Yuhao answered, "Eldest senior brother, I mentioned the things that I did when I was recounting yesterday's events to you because I don't wish to hide this from you. I obtained a very unique ability through a miraculous encounter. It can be counted as my third martial soul in a sense, and it has bestowed certain special abilities upon me. This special ability doesn't belong to our world, which is why I have the confidence to escape with my life whenever I'm in danger. I did intend to take a risk when I went undercover before yesterday, but after consolidating these unique abilities last night, I don't think that I'm taking a risk anymore. Dong'er, I said the same thing to you. If you're too concerned about me, I can simply take you along with me when I go undercover." Wang Dong'er felt a little curious when she heard his words. She knew very well that Huo Yuhao would never mess around whenever her life was concerned, which meant that he must be extremely confident if he could make such an endeavor sound so riskless. "You promised me last night." Wang Dong'er's pretty eyebrows knitted up as she stared at Huo Yuhao with indignant eyes. Huo Yuhao grasped her hand and said, "Listen to me, Dong'er. I wish to go undercover not just to investigate the Holy Ghost Church, but also to find a way to save teacher Xiao Ya. Nobody but me is more suitable for this job amongst the few of us, and that's because I'm the only one that has the ability to go undercover in the Holy Ghost Church. Only I have absolute confidence in convincing them that I'm an evil soul master. As for safety, how about this? I'd like you guys to see something." A gloomy and cold aura suddenly erupted from Huo Yuhao's body, followed by a peculiar grey soul ring rising from his feet in the next moment. This was the first time that Bei had seen Huo Yuhao use necromancy, thus he watched closely with widened eyes as he perceived Huo Yuhao's soul power undulations. Huo Yuhao's eyes became a faint grey color, and he pointed his right index finger outwards as he drew something in the air. A strange grey hexagram appeared and sparkled as it drifted to the ground. Grey light glowed from it the moment after it touched the ground, after which it consumed Hu Yuhao's entire body and he vanished into thin air. Even his wheelchair was gone. Wang Donga was as close as she could be to Hu Yuhao, and she was also incredibly familiar with his abilities. She could immediately tell that Hu Yuhao wasn't using his imitation or anything else to turn invisible, he'd actually disappeared for real. A dense aura of light rose from Wang Donga's body as her radiant butterfly goddess wings extended from her back. She flapped her wings gently, and light-type soul power immediately permeated every corner of the room. She didn't feel anything at all. Hu Yuhao was truly no longer present inside of the room. How is this possible? Instant teleportation? Hu Yuhao does have that ability, but that's one of his soul bones abilities. He mentioned before that he can't use his other soul skills or soul bones when he's practicing necromancy. How has he done this? He's disappeared completely. It's been more than 10 seconds, and he doesn't look like he's going to appear yet either. Just when Bei Bei and Wang Donga were beginning to feel more and more dumbfounded, the grey hexagram reappeared on the ground in the same spot. Grey light surged into the air in the next moment, and Hu Yuhao reappeared before the two of them amidst the grey light with a swoosh. Bei Bei and Wang Donga exchanged a look, both of their gazes full of awe and astonishment. Bei Bei was the first to blurt out, "What kind of ability was that?" Hu Yuhao smiled and replied, "This ability is a little mystical, but you can consider it something that my otherworldly teacher left behind for me. Eldest senior brother, do you remember the first time I met you and teacher Xiao Ya? I had ventured into the Great Stardow Forest by myself back then, and when you guys found me, I was unconscious near the roadside. I'm not sure if you remember, but dark clouds hung over the Great Stardow Forest during that time, and an intense spiritual presence flashed through the forest." Hu Yuhao could tell from Bei Bei's eyes that he was thinking hard. Bei Bei nodded after a moment and said, "I do remember something like that happening. We immediately followed you when we realized that you were heading towards the Great Stardow Forest, but you were already unconscious when we found you." Hu Yuhao nodded. "Yes, I'd already fainted by then. But before I fainted, someone entered my mind. That person is the teacher that I'm talking about, the one from another world. I'm still unsure even now where my teacher is from, and all I know is that he's very powerful. He told me that his powers were almost godlike, but his spirit was shattered for some reason, and only a thread of his divine sense arrived on our world. It was coincidental that he entered my mind, and he would awaken from time to time inside my spiritual sea afterwards. Most of the time, he was in deep slumber. He began to impart an ability called necromancy to me. At Donga's home some time afterwards, an energy inside my body was suddenly triggered. My teacher incinerated the last remnants of his divine sense to save me, and is now gone forever. However, he was the one that created the spirit that you guys have seen, and he was the one that showed me how to sign that pact with my spirit. Otherwise, how could I have innovated and invented this all by myself?" Bei Bei had a look of revelation on his face. "So that's the mystical story behind everything. No wonder I've always felt as if you had some deep and dark secret, so that's what happened. What did you mean when you said this was something that your teacher left behind for you?" Hu Yuhao answered, "He said that there are actually many planes in this world. Every plane is a world on its own, and some share the same spacetime with us, while others don't. Teacher used his own powerful abilities to create a relatively smaller world, which he called a demiplane. Before this, I used a spatial key that he had left behind to enter the demiplane that he had opened up. That wasn't instant shift, as I did leave this world entirely. This also means that I can hide inside his demiplane whenever I'm in danger, and I may even be able to bring some people inside. That world is a very narrow and simple world, but it's very safe." This was the first time that Wang Donga or Bei Bei had heard of something like this, and they were astonished beyond measure. They almost found it impossible to accept that there was something so mystical and fantastical in this world, that other planes actually existed, and people could enter those planes by using certain methods. Wang Donga asked curiously, "Yuhao, does that mean that both eldest senior brother and I can enter that demiplane you speak of?" Hu Yuhao nodded and said, "But you guys have to be mentally prepared. The demiplane that my teacher created has its own rules, and he claimed it to be one of the most complete demiplanes. All that's inside are my teacher's specters, and they've been nourished inside for thousands of years. Not even he knew how powerful they'd become, and how many there are. The world is very dark and eerie, and it can't be considered absolutely safe." "That's all right. Take me inside to have a look." Wang Donga was eager to give it a try. Hu Yuhao knew that he would have to prove to them that he had the ability to protect himself if he wanted to convince them to give him permission. He nodded and said, "Stand next to me. Let me try." Wang Donga and Bei Bei came up beside his wheelchair. Hu Yuhao raised his hand and began drawing that grey hexagram once more. Once they were close enough to him, both Bei Bei and Wang Donga could feel a chilly and sinister aura that made their hair stand on end when Hu Yuhao unleashed his third martial soul. It was an aura filled with deathly silence. Bei Bei's sensations were the deepest, as he had been interacting intimately with an aura of death and darkness in recent days. He thought to himself, little junior brother's abilities are actually very similar to that of an evil soul master. The hexagram that Hu Yuhao drew this time was a lot bigger than the previous one. Grey light burst out as the enormous hexagram gradually descended to the ground. All three of them were completely enveloped when the intense grey light rose up once more. The grey light flickered, and they vanished into thin air. Wang Donga and Bei Bei felt waves of intense dizziness, and everything around them seemed to twist and contort, as if it were about to be torn apart. Right at this moment, an ice-cold streak of air flowed from Hu Yuhao and protected them, separating them from this agonizing sensation. This process didn't take long. They suddenly felt their bodies relax as they arrived inside another world. Wang Donga and Bei Bei regained their senses, and saw that they were being protected by the grey streaks coming from Hu Yuhao's body. Hu Yuhao dispelled the grey air, and a cold wind gusted towards them. Wang Donga shivered from the cold, and only then did she look around at the world around her. This was only Hu Yuhao's second time inside this demiplane, and he was as curious as Wang Donga and Bei Bei were. The lighting was dim in this world. There was a strange-looking sun hovering in the skies above. It was black all over, and shone with insidious purple light. Yes, the light was purple. This purple light wasn't very strong, and was the reason why it was so dark and dim inside this demiplane. The landscape was uneven, and not a single plant could be seen even if they gazed into the distance. The ground was black, and appeared as if it had been painted over with black ink, while cold and chilly auras surged from all directions. There were some hills in front of them, and nothing else could be seen beyond that. There was a large door behind them. They seemed to have entered through this door. Is this really another world? Wang Donga asked, astounded. Hu Yuhao answered, according to my teacher, this isn't considered a world. The reason is because this place only has some ground, but it doesn't have a sky. Our world is a planet, and it possesses complete biological chains. We will enter a boundless world as long as we progress into the sky, but this demiplane is a far cry from our world. There are only undead creatures in this place. Furthermore, this world has its boundaries, and its boundaries are designated by darkness and nothingness. Any creature in this world will be consumed by that darkness and nothingness if they step into it. I've managed to bring us here with the spatial key that my teacher left behind for me, and that refers to this large door behind us. We can only return to our own world through this door. Bei Bei asked, what if the undead creatures in this world use this spatial key? Hu Yuhao answered without hesitation, they will enter our world. This undead demiplane that my teacher created was built to make it convenient for him to summon undead creatures. I will use another method to explain, and then you guys will know how powerful my teacher was when he was still alive. My teacher's full name was the Divine Law of Necromancy, the Calamity Necromancer Electrolux. His rationale for creating this undead demiplane was to investigate a certain branch of necromancy. According to the language that we speak on the Doluor continent, he wanted to research a soul skill. He created this place so that he could perfect his necromancy. After thousands of years of nourishment, there are uncountable powerful undead creatures in this world. Bei Bei and Wang Donga didn't really understand when Hu Yuhao droned on about magic and sorcery, but it was easier to understand when Hu Yuhao talked about soul skills. One single person could create an entire world. Even though it was an incomplete demiplane, this feat was frightening enough. How horrifyingly powerful were his magics and sorceries? Hu Yuhao stared at the fearful looks on their faces, and his eyes flowed with a contemplating look. You guys don't have to be afraid, Donga, eldest senior brother. Necromancy is powerful, and especially so when it's practiced at the level that my teacher was at. He was a demigod, and necromancy at that level becomes so powerful that it's almost impossible to believe. However, my teacher mentioned that no matter how powerful necromancers are, they have to use their own life energy to practice necromancy. My teacher used some special magic rituals to turn himself into a half-human and half-undead lich back then, but his body gradually declined and withered after using some exceptionally powerful spells. He told me that the abilities he imparted to me were only part of his own abilities. Despite that, these abilities are enough to be useful for an entire lifetime. Wang Donga said, can we walk a little further to look around, Yuhao? Of course we can, but we have to be careful. We can encounter undead creatures at any time in this place. He pushed his own wheelchair as he spoke. He faced the large door behind him, and chanted something under his breath before the large door transformed into a grey streak and entered his palm. Never move more than 20 steps away from me, as I can take care of you guys within this range. This is especially so for Donga, because your light-type abilities will be greatly weakened in this place, because the element of light doesn't exist in this demiplane. Wang Donga was momentarily stunned, and hurriedly released her martial soul. Indeed, when her soul rings rose one after another from her feet, her radiant butterfly goddess wings that extended from her back turned entirely blue in color. Furthermore, they were dim and lightless, and the golden spots that were supposed to be on their surface became pale yellow patterns. Wang Donga could clearly feel that her soul power was being consumed at an exponentially greater rate after she released her martial soul. Under such circumstances, she could only rely on her own soul power to use her soul skills, and she couldn't draw upon any strength from the element of light in the air. Without the element of light, there was no way she could regenerate what she expended. That's just incredible. It's true. Bei Bei released his martial soul as well, but his situation was a lot better than Wang Donga's situation. 6 soul rings rose from the ground as lightning circulated around his body. Fine, compact scales covered his right arm and began to spread all over his body. Bei Bei said, "I don't feel any different in this place compared to our own world. The only difference is that the air seems to tremble and quiver, as if it's been stimulated by my lightning." Hua Yuhao nodded and replied, "That's very normal. From an elemental perspective, light and lightning are generally good counters against undead creatures. This place doesn't have any light elements, so these undead creatures will become unnaturally powerful. However, there aren't any restrictions on lighting-type abilities. Therefore, you will fare well against the undead creatures in this place, eldest senior brother." Hua Yuhao signaled for Wang Donga to continue pushing his wheelchair as he spoke. They quickly headed up a nearby hill. This video will end here.